Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world.
Today, we're going to look at politics through a really different lens, drawing from the work when an AI thinks about politics. Now, this isn't about today's headlines. Instead, we're going to try to map out the underlying engine, the machine that drives our political systems. We'll look at the pressures it's under, the incentives that guide it, the kind of predictable outcomes it spits out, and maybe why it all feels so stuck.
So, where do we even begin? Well, before you can figure out why something seems broken, you kind of have to know what it is in the first place, right? What is the actual system we're looking at?
Okay, so here it is. We're looking at democratic governments trying to function while being absolutely flooded by the insane complexity of modern life. I'm talking everything from the tangled web of global finance to the non-stop 24/7 news cycle. So it's not just about leaders making choices, it's about the chaotic environment they're forced to make them in.
And this right here, this metaphor is perfect. It really gets to the core of the idea. Just imagine it. An air traffic control tower in the middle of a massive hurricane. The operators are trying to guide planes, but their radar is fuzzy, their radios are crackling, and, get this, some of the pilots are actually being paid to fly in the wrong direction. In a system like that, crashes aren't just a possibility, they become predictable.
All right, so if our system is that control tower in a storm, what's distorting the instruments? What's making that radar so fuzzy? Let's break down the three biggest conflicting incentives that are really pulling the levers here.
First up, there's a huge incentive to control the message, not to be transparent. Think about it. Things like state-run media, censorship, or taking a super complex issue and boiling it down to a simple, misleading soundbite. These are all tools designed to push a specific agenda. In this kind of environment, being right is way less important than winning the information war.
Second, the system creates these massive rewards for insider access. Lobbying by powerful corporations or special interest groups can completely hijack policy, pulling it away from what the public actually needs and toward what benefits a select view. And when people see that happening over and over, well, of course their trust in the institutions starts to fall apart.
And finally, the whole system is basically wired for the quick fix, not the long-term solution. You've got aging populations putting a huge strain on pension systems, or the constant temptation for governments to just print more money to solve an immediate problem, even if it causes massive inflation down the line. All this pressure forces reactive, short-sighted decisions. It's all about kicking the can down the road instead of actually fixing the road.
So what happens when you take this incredibly complex system and then you inject these powerful, conflicting incentives into it? Well, certain outcomes stop being surprising. They become the inevitable crashes that our control tower metaphor warned us about. And this is the absolute key takeaway. Things like intense political gridlock, economic instability, and policies that seem totally disconnected from reality, these aren't random failures. They're not bugs in the system. They are features. They are the logical outputs of a machine running exactly as it was designed.
But wait, it gets even more interesting. Because these predictable outcomes, they don't just happen and then fade away. They actually create a powerful feedback loop that makes the system incredibly resistant to change. It's not just that the system is broken, it actively works to keep itself broken.
Just look at this cycle. It starts with poor outcomes, which naturally make people lose faith in institutions. That growing distrust leads to disengagement. Why bother participating if the whole thing feels rigged, right? But here's the kicker. Less public engagement means less public oversight. And that opens the door for even more insider capture of the system, which, of course, leads to even worse outcomes. And that just fuels more distrust. It's a vicious, self-reinforcing loop.
And this, right here, is the crisis in perception. We get so caught up in the drama of personalities, arguing over which politician is good or bad, who's to blame for what, that we completely miss the incentive-driven machine humming away beneath the surface. We're all shouting at the flight controllers, while completely ignoring the fact that their instruments are broken.
Okay, so for the final piece of this puzzle, we have to zoom out. Because this political system we've been describing doesn't exist in a vacuum. It's plugged into even larger, global systems that actually reinforce all of these problems.
For one, it's plugged directly into our modern information ecosystem. Think about it. Social media platforms can serve up an endless stream of content that keeps us entertained and outraged, but also distracted from the deeper structural issues that are much harder to solve.
It's also deeply woven into global economics. That pressure to devalue a currency we talked about, that's not just a domestic issue. It's often part of a huge global competition where countries are trying to get a trade advantage, which just adds another layer of complexity and instability to everything.
And when you dig all the way down to the foundation, the entire structure is built on one thing: public trust, institutional legitimacy. But as we've just seen, the system's own internal logic seems designed to erode the very trust it needs to survive, and that creates a pretty fundamental crisis.
So, after all this, seeing the structure, what actually changes? Well, by shifting our focus away from the personalities and onto the systemic incentives in these powerful feedback loops, we gain a totally new kind of clarity. And that structural clarity? Well, it's a far more powerful tool for understanding our world than just following the daily political drama. Crisis and Perception examines how systems shape belief and how better tools help us see clearly. This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis and Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description. If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.